Hello, Moz. Delighted to be having a second chat with you. Myself and Steve Evans here.
Hi, Moz. How you doing, mate?
I'm fine, thank you. Good evening again, Terry. Good evening, Steve.
Excellent. Good to speak to you again. How's it hanging in Stockport this evening? And are you still involved? Big question for you. Are you still involved with Didsbury? I know you were a year ago.
Yeah.
Are you still involved at all with them or doing much with them?
Not really. So I go down and show my face, and if they need any historical stuff, then they drag me out. But otherwise, I'm letting all the younger people get on with it. They're doing very well. They don't need me.
Excellent. Yeah. So what are you doing with your spare time instead? Writing.
Loads of volunteering. So I'm volunteering with armed forces charities and armed forces voluntary groups. I help run the Stockport Armed Forces and Veterans Breakfast Club. I sit on the Armed Forces Partnership with the council. I'm an ambassador for something called Project Recce, which is about helping ex-service people transition into Civvy Street, specifically into construction sector. And I'm helping to plan Armed Forces Day in Stockport this year. So it's kind of full on, really.
Excellent. Yeah, sounds like you're busy with that. Never mind, just your writing.
You're doing the voluntary work as well, aren't you, Steve, with the fire service?
Yeah, I do some with the fire service and the NHS. And, you know, I could be involved with veteran stuff from the forces as well. I just don't have the time to get round to it, one thing and another. You know, just life catches up with you, doesn't it?
Yeah. It is. Life's a balance. You can't do everything. But for me, I feel like I'm making a contribution and helping some people who are maybe in less stable positions than I am. So that's where we are.
Yeah, good stuff. Very good stuff. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. Moz, last time we talked about your 3 memoirs and the 2 novels. But let's talk about them again. It's worthy of it.
I'm really surprised that the memoirs continue to sell. They're written in a really honest way. I think I said last time, as if I was having a beer with you, and I was telling you my stories. That's how I wrote it deliberately. So they're not the best in terms of editing. I know these grammar errors and possibly some spelling errors.
That makes them more authentic, though, doesn't it?
I've left it as it is. I did take on board some feedback in the early days, and I made some changes. But really, they stand on their own 2 feet, and they continue to sell. They're available free on Kindle Unlimited, and virtually every day, somebody somewhere in the world is reading one of my memoirs, which just gives me such a thrill overall. And I wrote the books just to pass the time during lockdown, and to try and write some accounts that my grandchildren would perhaps understand, because at the moment they just see this silly old bloke in the corner. And then by the time they get to sensible age, I'll be gone. I'll pop me clogs, and I wanted to leave something for them and their children to read about the silly old guy that was sat in the corner drinking rum.
Brilliant. It's not just the memoirs, though. It's the 2 novels, isn't it? That's sort of purely fiction, Quest and Revenge. To tell us about both of them, Moz.
Yeah, sure. So the first novel I wrote was Quest, and it's a survival story essentially. It's set in a world that's not unlike where we're going at the moment. So following a pandemic, 1 or 2 countries decide to attack each other, and it turns into a world war. So the resulting activity of the pandemic and the wars results in the vast majority of people on Earth dying, and there's only a few left. So if you were left alone on a planet, no one's producing oil, no one's producing milk, unless you've got cows. But animals are just going to be in short supply because people are going to be killing them to eat them. So that's essentially the story. It's a group of people who end up together, and then they play off each other's strengths and weaknesses, and they try and go from A to B to find out a bit more about what's gone on and why has it happened, and what can they do about it. And that's the story. So it's a group of people going from A to B, and they kind of go back nearer towards A to sort something out. And but I think it's quite exciting. It's quite tense, and some brutal action in there as well.
Okay, post-apocalyptic. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite a good plot, really, isn't it? Because if you've only got a few people left, you've lost a lot of skills and where do you start, and where do you get all this expertise from to do this, that, and the other, and you just basically start from scratch. So I do like the idea,
And it's like today. I mean, there are less and less police about, and as a community, we self-police, and there's a lot of peer values and peer pressure.
Yeah.
But what happens if there were no police, no law, no judge, no one's there to help you, and somebody decides one day, well, I'm going to do it my way, and if that means enslaving some people so they work for me, then that's not right. But what do you do about it? And the characters in the book come across enclaves like that, and then have to deal with it, and they do find some answers. And there's a nice little twist in it, because what caused the pandemic isn't what you think it is. It's not caused by something we've done today, and it's actually caused by a future, and that runs parallel. So 500 years in the future, everyone's gone underground because the planet's become unlivable, and some of the people have gone down there are in a different position. So they try to change history by going back in time, and unfortunately, by going back in time, they release an infection into the world, and it causes massive changes. But it's a really good story, and it's got a couple of good twists at the end of the story.
Excellent.
Okay, and that's Quest, isn't it?
That's Quest, yeah.
Right. So moving on to Revenge, which sounds a bit more like, I don't know, revenge of some description from your point of view. Is it a story from the past, maybe?
There's some elements of me in it, and I base the story on witnessing something where some people came into a business and tried to demand protection money out of the owner, and he was trying to explain he was already paying protection money to another gang, and it was only, it passed off without any violence. But I thought, what happens if that went the opposite way and it did become violent? What would happen? And what happens if that did take place and somebody in that premises was an ex-forces person with some skills, and they do something about it? But what they don't realise is it's just a catalyst for revenge and revenge and revenge. And the whole story's set in a 7-day period. So it's gangs of Manchester fighting a turf war. Some old guys with ex-military guys with skills decide to do something about it, but then something happens to one of their guys. So it's just revenge after revenge. And I think somebody put a review on this week. They've never read a book with such a high body count in it.
Sounds great.
Very authentic,
great.
Very, very dark story. A bit of comedy in the way. There's a lot of comedy in there, to be honest. There's a lot of humour throughout it, very dark humour. But there's also quite a lot of violence and tough dialogue, as it would really be in real life.
Not for the faint-hearted, then.
not for the faint-hearted. But
I'd love it.
It's some good reviews, and it's starting to be picked up. I'm probably selling about 7 or 8 books a month. Revenge. I'm probably selling 2 or 3 quests, but I'm still selling 20 odd memoirs virtually every month.
That's excellent.
It's
That's
brilliant.
really good.
Yeah. Moz, so based on that success, you're self-published. Are you getting approaches from agents or publishers because you've had this success?
No, and there are a lot of us. There are a lot of people writing. There's a lot of us out there trying to do this. I really do think that both Revenge and Quest would make good movies, because the storylines that haven't really been touched, as I've seen on anything that's on TV or Netflix, if somebody was to approach me, and I'm currently writing a couple more books. So I'm writing another kind of addendum to the memoirs, which will come out with a different title. And I've got another work in progress underway, which is another dark comedy thriller. So I'm using my brain and getting myself into writing again. I had a long period of time last year where my mum passed away, and it was really quite difficult. And she was ill for a short while, and then she got better, and then she died. And the shock of that just had a bit of an impact. And I didn't have the need or the want. And I've got that purpose back again, so that's why I'm writing. So it's good. But yeah, no one's approached me, and I would be open to approach if somebody wanted to know more. But I certainly think the 2 novels would make good Netflix movies, possibly even a series.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it, when you're selling that sort of volume? And I mean, it's not massive, but it's big enough that people will sit up and take note, maybe, and go, "Hang on, we'll take this guy on as as his publisher or whatever, and then try and promote you to like people like Netflix. You know, you never know, do you? So it's a shame it hasn't happened so far. Yeah.
In total, I've sold about 2,500 books. So
Excellent.
I think I'm doing something right, and I would advocate anybody with a good story to tell to self-publish. Go through Kindle Direct Publishing. Go through another source. I chose KDP because it was pretty much free, and I didn't expect to sell. I honestly never expected to sell 100 books. Never mind 2,500. It's not making me a lot of money. I get about anywhere between 60p and £1.30, depending what platform it's sold from. So it's never going to make me rich. I just like it. I enjoy writing. I enjoy telling stories, and I enjoy sharing them.
Yeah, it's excellent. And the more you do sell, the better. You know, you just never know then, do you, where it goes? So it's all good stuff. Yeah. So moving on to a bit more main focus then. What's in the Moz pipeline then? I mean, you said you've got some books coming out. Can you tell us a little bit more about what they're about?
Yeah, so I've done about 4,500 5,000 words of a new set of short stories, and they're just based on real events that I've been involved in. So the book's working title currently is "The Day My Mates Thought I Was Dead," and other funny stories. And
I can just imagine. Yeah, maybe humour. Yeah.
I tell a story about walking in Buxton and I collapsed, and I was in a bit of a sorry state, combination of being dehydrated and struggling with breathing on a particular day, and it's comical. It's a comical story, so I just thought I'd use that as the title. The Day My Mates Thought I Died, and other funny stories.
That's excellent. Love it.
Is that another like Born in Stockport Part 4 then?
It could be, but I'm thinking about bringing it out under a different title. The reason why I say that is I have had some negative feedback, is that people see the Navy covers and expect all 3 books to be totally about the Navy.
Yeah.
I've been very open about it. I've been very open that I had a difficult, time as a teenager. I was a bit of a rascal as a kid, and the Navy just sorted me out, slapped me about a bit, made me come to my senses, get on with stuff, and I credit all of my success, both as a dad and as a granddad with our family, the work I've done. None of that would have happened if I hadn't have got myself sorted out when I was in the Navy, and I owe them everything. So that's the reason why I use it in my title. But it's confusing to somebody who's expecting to read about ships and battles and battleships and things, and it's not about that. So taking on board that feedback, I would probably choose a different cover and approach.
Okay.
Yeah. Would it be worth refreshing the titles, or is that just wouldn't work?
I don't know. I think I don't know. I have been asked, would I try and do something to put them into a single book? The snag is it'd be massive. We're talking like 240,000 words across those 3 books. That's just like a tome.
Yeah, that's a lot, isn't it? That's like a big, huge Bible, though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, or a gigantic desk Oxford dictionary or something. So I've kept it attractive, and I've kept the price of the books as low as I can. So my memoirs are £6 a piece. Revenge is 7, Quest is 8, and that's only based on the print size fees that Amazon charge.
Yeah, and free on Kindle as well, as you say.
Free on Kindle Unlimited. I can't advertise that enough. I think it's a great service for those people who want to take advantage of more reading at low cost. I think it's a great idea.
So what happens with Kindle if it's free? You just don't have any royalties from that at all? Do you just waive any rights to that?
No, I do get royalties, but there are about 50% of what they would be. No, less than that. 50% of a paperback, and about 25% of a Kindle copy. So if you read the whole book, you get paid so many pence per page. Yeah. Or page, like 1p for 10 pages read, kind of thing. It does create a revenue stream, but it's a very, very small one, very low value.
You know what I've read recently? People are complaining on Twitter as well, saying that Amazon, they allow you to sort of bring a book out on Kindle and then send it back. So sorry, I don't want to, return it after they've read it. And obviously authors are losing out with that.
I've experienced that over the 2.5 years since I first started writing. I've seen quite a bit of that. Less so recently, but I've seen quite a bit. And usually there will be usually 1 return to 2 returns a month out of my sales of between 25 and 30 a month.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, isn't it?
It is. It's a bit cheeky, but clearly some people are getting away with it. So
Yeah.
Do you know the Kindle process? Putting the book up there on the Amazon site. Are you doing all the edits and the book covers as well, and the format and the typescript?
So for the first three, and just anybody watching this looks at the three images to your right shoulder, that's a fairly standard format that's created by Kindle Direct Publishing, and you just choose the colours, and I bang some photographs on there. The other two, the novels, my niece very kindly did the artwork. I know it might not necessarily be the sharpest and most attractive looking covers, but the covers that my family have put together, and that I'm really, really pleased with.
Personal,
and very personal. And I thank Abigail several times in both books for the support she's given me, and my friends who've also been beta readers. And my family have been beta readers. So the whip I'm currently writing is quite a dark story. I didn't intend writing it as a detective story, but because of the nature of the story, I need to give it some police authenticity. And I'm not a police officer. Well, I've been on the other side of the table many times, but I've not been on the proper side. And luckily, I've got a best mate who is, and he's been able to sort of guide me, and he's going to be my beta reader on this to make sure that, despite all my research, and you do a hell of a lot of research before you write a book, I want to make sure that what I write is real and is believable by those people who know more about it than I do. But I want to concentrate more on the dark style and the humour that's in the book, rather than making sure I get the police and legal matters correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Just going back a step. I know you talked before about your mum passing away, and then I think you've had some health issues yourself. I mean, Terry and I both have had some serious health issues in the last 6 months or so, and just wondered, how have you come through that and recovered? Did you find writing helped you? I mean, initially you stopped because you obviously wanted to be with your mum, deal with your mum. So did it all help in the long run once you got going again? Make you feel better about yourself? And
simple answer is yes. I think writing is quite cathartic. I went through a pretty difficult period 5 years ago. So it was almost 6 years ago now. My brain stopped working, and I was totally clueless as to what was going on. So I went to work. I was at a fairly innocuous business meeting in Manchester, and I felt faint, and I thought I was going to be sick, and I thought I'm going to faint it. And being a kind of a trained first aider, I thought I need to lie on the floor now, draw my knees up, and go to sleep. And I honestly believe that's what I did. And then I woke up 8 hours later in a hospital bed with my wife sat next to me, and a doctor stood over me. And I hadn't gone on the floor to sleep. I'd actually got up out of the room and walked out of the room, and somebody followed me. And I've covered that in my memoirs, actually, because I think there's some important messages. What happened to me was my blood pressure went off the scale. Whatever off the scale is, mine did. And my brain gave, the neurologist who saw me afterwards, the consultant, said that my brain gave up a little bit like a fuse does in an appliance. So the overload caught, my heart was fine, my lungs were fine, my liver was fine, all my vital organs, but my brain just went, enough. And I had no memory for 8 hours. I had no method of making a new memory, but I was wide awake, and I kept asking my wife the same question over and over again without ever being able to digest the answer. I didn't even know I was asking the questions. I have no memory of it. It took about, the really bad bit was I had 6 weeks of migraines, having never had a migraine properly in my life. I was constant for 6 weeks, and vertigo. And it took about 6 months before I was confident enough to think, I think I've got most of my memories back. But it lasted about another year and a half where I wasn't sure whether what I was remembering, and especially when, I was a project director in a construction company, and it also left me a little bit dyslexic with numbers, which is like a no-no if you're a project director, if you can't add up properly. And so I just said to my boss, I'm thinking of retiring. I think this is probably time for me to go. And while we went through that process of retiring, I got a little surprise. So my mental health and well-being was challenged several times. The first one by the thing called global transient amnesia, the migraine and vertigo. and then a year and a bit later, challenged by being diagnosed with prostate cancer, and electing to go through a process. I chose something called brachytherapy, little tiny radium seeds injected into your prostate, and they lowered the measure that you measure it by, something called PSA, and it reduced
PSI, yeah, I know.
PSA from 10.9 to it's now 0.1.
Well, that's really positive. That
it is.
Yeah.
So something else will kill me. It won't be that. Because I'm going back to your question and going back to you two not being well yourselves. I think the sell by date's gone. I think 45 years, and then it's a bit like buying a new car. You know, after so long, bits fall off it. So I think that's what's happened to us. Bits have been falling off us, all growing on us, and I think that's just all it is. We've just gone past the warranty period,
like barnacles.
Yeah, you're probably right.
That's it.
But I hope you both look like you've come through it, and you both look like you're in a good place. So, but it's good to talk about it, because blokes never talk about ill health.
You're right. Yeah. My wife she told me we're going to the hospital, and I was like, no, I'll be right in half an hour. And I wasn't.
Yeah.
But all good now. Same as Steve. Steve was in a poorly condition over Christmas, but both better. 2 thumbs. Yeah.
Yours is a bit more recent than mine, Terry, and you're probably still getting over yours, to be fair.
It's coming and going. My blood pressure, similar to yours, was it went. Basically, I was told to get to A&E immediately. Blood pressure was sky high.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was having a heart attack. With the blood pressure, with the heart bumping, it brings on like a panic attack. It's like a chicken and egg. You know, that makes me more anxious than the blood pressure's rising. And with being told to go straight to A&E, that makes it rise. And being in A&E for 9 hours, that doesn't help. But touch wood, I'm under treatment now, so it's under control, hopefully.
Good.
Yeah. Well, the other side of the coin, I got to A&E and I was in straight away. No hanging around for me. I was that desperate. It was that bad at one point. Yeah. So literally in the door and straight into resource. No messing. So it was Terry had to wait 9 hours.
Well, I've got a lot of positives to say about the NHS. I think they do a fantastic job. Yeah. I think they're challenged by all sorts of stuff, technology. They're challenged by volume of stuff coming in, and they're challenged by the bureaucracy of their own systems. But the guys and girls who deal with you are just second to none, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Oof, that's heavy.
Yeah, it was a bit heavy.
Oh, and now on a happier note.
A happier note, yeah.
On a happier note.
Yeah. We go back to your writing. Sorry,
I was going to say, speaking about your writing again. I don't know. I can't remember if we touched on this before. How do you prepare or start when you're thinking about writing a book? Do you make notes, or if you're going out and you're halfway through a book, do you make notes on a notepad? Do you write it in your phone? Or do you have set periods where you sit down and write for hours and hours? Or, do you have a set period per day or so many hours a week? Or what's your method or preferred method?
Okay, it's partly structured and a lot unstructured. So the structured bit is I get an idea, and then I try and draw or write a straw man. Now sometimes that can be etched. I've always got a pad of scrap paper on the table, so that can be drawn if as a mind map, or I'll use a spreadsheet and I'll try and throw some chronology on. It was essential when I wrote Revenge, because it was action over a 7-day period. I had to get the chronology right and the different aspects of what was going on. So I did a printed, I think it was 8 sheets of A4 off as my map on the wall, so that I could keep track of who was doing what and when they were doing it, because it is quite a complex story. And likewise for this current one, it's got a fairly stable chronology, but the best way to tell a story sometimes is to push some things out of sequence, so that you get a little bit of drama and you're able to perhaps bring some of the twists in. So I'm structured in that respect. I'm unstructured insofar as a lot of my work is in my head. So I tend to do a lot of thinking when I'm walking with the dog, or walking with my wife, or with the grandchildren, or just sitting thinking. So I'm not I can watch telly, but it's not my first thing unless it's football or it's a movie. But I tend to do a lot of my thinking, and I think through the scenarios and the problems, and then I kind of look at it from different angles to go, oh, that doesn't work. But I'll do that in my head before I commit anything to paper, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've heard recently, I hadn't heard it myself until the past couple of writers me and Steve have chatted to. They're putting things on the phone. And the phone's a thing that you've always got with you. You know, half the time you won't have a notebook and pen with you. But if you've got your phone, and they're sending like text messages to themselves or within a WhatsApp group, just a little reminder or notes, you know, to jog the memory or a little phrase.
I do the same.
Yeah.
So when I'm out and there's something particularly good, I'll actually send myself an email, and it might have 2 or 3 bullet points on it.
Yeah.
And then when I'm sat down at either the laptop or the desktop, then it pops up and I've actually got the bullet points. I just copy and paste them straight in.
Yeah. For me, can I ask, what is your writing dream? Is it to get your work? We mentioned Netflix and things and possibilities. Is it to get your work on the big screen?
I would love for either one of my novels to hit the big screen somewhere or one way or another.
Yeah.
I write for fun. I write to share my stories, and I really do hope that people enjoy them as much as I did when I wrote them. And so far, the vast majority of feedback is very, very, very positive. So I know that I'm doing the right thing. So I'd like to. It would be nice to reach a wider audience, and through films, you can do that.
Yeah. Fair enough. So I must ask you very quickly. I've got one other question as well. What do you read yourself? Do you get a chance to read yourself? More to the point.
I don't read as much as I used to do, and I have noticed that I read a lot slower since my global transient amnesia 5 years ago.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I read a lot slower. At the moment, I'm reading through I've got a pile of 10 paperbacks that are purchased off other independent authors, and I'm slowly working my way through those. And I've read some absolutely fantastic books. I've read an author called David Jarvis has written 2 books, and he's a very, very interesting guy. Writes very, very subtle humour, observational humour within his stories, and they're kind of spy stories. One's called Tip of the Iceberg, and just you have to forgive me, David. I can't remember the title of the book now, but they're 2 really good stories. But I've also read David Toft. I've read one of his books called Endgame, which is a paranormal, and I wouldn't necessarily normally read a paranormal book, but I found it very interesting. Pestilence from Susie Curley, which is a good story. Again, not unlike the new series called The Last of Us, you know, where the world is taken over by a version of Triffids. So there are some good authors out there, and I'm working my way through those. But I've also got Lee Child, and I've got Bruce Cornwell. I've got some of their books to pick up and read.
Jack Reacher. Have you seen the television series?
Yes.
The guy, he looks like the proper Reacher on Amazon. You know, he is 6 foot odd.
He is.
But not like Tom Cruise is, what, 3'4", something like that?
I think something like that, yeah. I think Ken Dodd would have him in his troop, wouldn't he?
Right.
Love it, yeah.
I don't think Tom Cruise is going to pick up my books as a movie, is he now, after that?
No.
Right, brilliant.
Finally, from me, what advice would you give to a newbie writer who's coming into writing for the first time? He's going to write a book. What should he do? What's the best way to approach it?
Brain dump. Just write. Just brain dump the words. It doesn't matter what the format is. It doesn't matter how neat it is. It doesn't matter whether the spelling or grammar's right. Get your story out. Once the story's out there, you can play around with it. You can edit it. You can do all sorts of things. But the story's in your head. Get that thing from your head into the written form the best way you can, and then everything else after that is function. It's quite a mechanical process to choose, to do, to format and do things. But you're the one. The writer is the one that's got the idea either in there or in here. And I would just say, do it.
Spot on.
Brilliant.
That's excellent advice.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. Moz, on that note, let's just say again, it's been an absolute delight chatting with you. We'll have to have a third one when those new 2 novels comes out. Definitely.
I look forward to it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been great. Again.
Really enjoyed it. Yeah. But for now, Moz, you take care, mate, and let's keep in touch.
I will do. Take care, Steve. Take care, Terry.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you, Moz. Cheers. Thanks.